You're listening to SMSF Connect podcast on i-radiolive that brings you programs covering a variety of genres under development.
Hello and welcome. This is Aarti. We bring to you the second part of our interview with Keegan Kotsky from the World Food Prize Foundation. Keegan is Senior Director, Global Youth Programs and Partnerships at the World Food Prize Foundation, headquartered in Des Moines, US. In the earlier episode, we spoke about challenges to food security and also about preparing our next generation to overcome these challenges. This is part 2 of our discussion featured in this episode. So moving on, we always say that innovations can lead the future. And if I talk about food security, what innovations come to your mind that have an impact in advancing the Sustainable Development Goals and food security?
There are so many. I think this is one of the most beautiful and powerful things. There are heroes all around us every day solving these problems. There are innovators and entrepreneurs that are making an incredible difference in every community and all around us, but we don't often highlight them. We don't celebrate them and elevate that good work and those important things. The World Food Prize has been given to 51 individuals since it was first created. And I think it's incredibly powerful that 8 of those individuals whose work was celebrated and those innovations came from India and came from this region of the world. And as we think about, what are some of those innovations, we start with Dr. Swaminathan and his role in shaping the Green Revolution and bringing those technologies to farmers and getting them into the hands of the people that needed them most. But it's so much more than that. It was Gurdev Kush and the work on improved rice varieties that were so instrumental, not just in wheat, but in so many other crops that were foundational. It was Verghese Kurian and the transformation of the dairy industry in India and how that white revolution transformed families and empowered them to have a place in the process, right? That was the problem before. They were producing the milk, but they weren't empowered to actually then benefit and be a part of the process to collectively organize its processing and its distribution to get the benefits of the system. So even those things where it wasn't even necessarily the initial, it was the philosophy of empowering the people to actually benefit and improve their lives was what was so transformative in some of those kind of models. It wasn't about a technology per se. It was actually about those broader social processes and organizations that were critical. Something that the SM Segal Foundation, does incredibly well now and really focuses on that organization at the school level, at the village level, at the community level to mobilize individuals to be able to activate and have agency to improve their own lives. But as we go forward, those innovations, whether it's quality protein maize and improving the digestible protein content that Surinder Vassal and others developed with CIMMIT, it's really quite remarkable, all of the different innovations. Aditi Mukherjee, working on groundwater resources, looked at how do we incentivize and remove barriers facing farmers and families to just get access to the water to better manage it. So again, in so many ways, I think it's both about technologies and innovations and new crop varieties or disease-resistant, species, but it's also about just the important political processes, the social processes, the community-based development work that is really transformational. And we were so honored last week to be able to announce Dr. Mahalingam Govindaraj as this year's Borlaug Field Award winner for developing Dana Shakti, the first biofortified pearl millet varieties, developing them here in India, now reaching hundreds of thousands of families and farmers with improved zinc and improved iron in those pearl millet varieties. So again, a climate smart crop that's good in dry lands and is going to be critical for our future, and now has improved nutrition and value so that every family that's consuming it is going to be healthier, is going to have those critical micronutrients that they need to live a healthy and good life. So there are so many different innovations that we can focus on. I think sometimes there is also a bias towards the plant sciences and other areas, and it's important to remember heroes like Shakuntala Tilstead working in aquatic foods, and Modudugu Gupta on aquaculture, that it's not just always about large livestock, it's not just about our crops, it's also about fish systems and aquatic foods in other ways, algae and other incredible resources that we have available that are nutrient rich and can both improve the livelihoods of families and provide a new income source, but also can improve their protein access and the micronutrient benefits that they get every day, especially for women and children. So there are so many different incredible innovators and innovations that are happening over the last 50 years and today all around us. And I think it's so important that we actually focus on what's working, because it's easy to get focused on what's not
working.
And what are the deficiencies and failings and what are we not living up to. And that's important to acknowledge. There is a long ways to go in this work. And especially when we look at India today, incredible agricultural productivity and one of the great success stories in the world. And yet it's not translating into improved nutrition for children, especially in health. We still see incredibly high rates of stunting and wasting among children. We see high levels of anemia. And again, these are all very solvable. And yet somehow it hasn't happened. So we need to focus and really emphasize what's working and what can be replicated and scaled. That's where we'll address these issues and be able to accomplish it, while acknowledging that what we've done hasn't been enough. We haven't put the resources behind it, we haven't politically prioritized it, and the public hasn't valued it. And that's ultimately our biggest challenge, right? Politicians will do what the public wants. That means we have to educate every individual in a society to understand the importance of these issues and what's possible. So that ultimately is on all of us to do. It's not just about complaining that political leaders aren't making it a priority. We have to make sure every individual in society is a part of that food system and is aware of it and knows what can be done.
Yeah. So everything here is connected. Water, agriculture, we already know that they go hand in hand. Also, you talked about biodiversity in the nature, the food cycle. So if we talk about food biodiversity, what are your views on that? How can we, because you said that it's not translating into nutrition for kids in India, although agriculture sector is doing so good. So what will you say about food biodiversity?
So I want to speak to two different elements of this. And one is maybe more getting actually back to the question you just asked a moment ago about, interesting innovations and what's working. There is so much potential in crop wild relatives. We have, over the course of the last 50 years or so, in all of the advances in genetics and in breeding and others, we've in many cases focused more narrowly on fewer crops and improving and developing disease-resistant varieties and addressing, other challenges. But now there's this moment where we're realizing the wild relatives of every food crop that we eat in the world is largely still out there. There may be very little left of some, and we've lost others, but if we can find it now, and if we can map it genetically, then all of the potential of those genes that's in there can in the future be utilized to improve and to address future challenges we aren't even facing yet. I think that's some of the things about when I think about the future that make me so excited. There is a whole world that we don't yet understand, not just there, but even in our microbiome, in the human gut. All of the different dynamics and mechanisms and chemicals that influence our behavior and our health and disease and everything, we are only just starting to learn and understand. And as that advances in the next 20 years, our ability to address these issues will fundamentally change. It's not just about, are they getting enough protein or calories? Are they getting the right nutrients? We'll actually understand how the body is metabolizing that and how that is then influencing, these other mechanisms of health and well-being. So I'm excited for that advance in kind of our understanding still of our own bodies and what's possible. But the same is true in our soils and in the root systems of every plant and in all of the animals, species that exist. We are only just starting to untap the knowledge and potential of those interactions that are so complex and important. So it's really going to fundamentally change not just crop wild relatives and the genetic potential of the plants of our planet, and how we'll be able to utilize them in the future with these advanced technologies, but even just our own understanding of our own bodies, our soil systems, our planetary systems. There's still so much we don't know. And I think sometimes we are so focused on on what we do and how innovative and exciting that is, and it is. But it's also, we are only just starting. These are baby steps in a much broader future in the next 1,000 years of where we're headed. When it comes, though, to that broader diversity of our foods that you're discussing, I think one of the things we have to be so very careful of is when I think about potatoes. There are thousands of families throughout the Andes raising local varieties of potatoes, and it may only be 4 or 5 families that are raising this one specific variety in a valley in Peru or in another country. Unless we preserve that biological diversity, unless we make sure that right now we prioritize that as a society, we will lose it, and we won't regain it. And so again, we do have to make some of those issues a real priority. And when we think about our dietary diversity, we've come a long ways, and I think even when we look at the innovations of the last, decade, we are now prioritizing improving the nutritional quality of our food. Where 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we focused on preservation of food so that it lasted longer. The taste profile and whether people would want to consume it and purchase it. And again, it's not that those aren't important characteristics, but that's what we prioritized in industry. That's what we prioritized in food science as a field. Now, for the first time in the last decade or so, we're starting to say, but wait, what about the actual nutritional value of the foods? What about the diversity of the diet? If a third of our world's population is obese and is now struggling from chronic disease issues because of what we consume and how sedentary our lifestyles are, clearly something's wrong. The system is broken, and our food system, our nutritional systems are not working to meet our needs as a human population. We're finally realizing that. We're finally taking action to address it. So I think, again, it's only just starting. That kind of revolution in our dietary diversification and the quality of our food.
Thank you so much, Keegan. That brings us to the end of the very informative discussion that we had on food security and regrading our soils and food. So thank you for your time, and we really had a great time talking to you.
Oh, thank you, and continue the incredible work that you are doing.
Thank you for being with us. Stay tuned for more. You can also listen to these podcasts on Spotify, Apple, and Google.